right, let's talk about Russia-U.S. relations pertaining to the hatred that seems to be spewing out of the U.S. toward Russia specifically. Where does it come from? Is it is it based in reality? Is it mindless hatred like a lot of the stuff that we see recently? Americans hating Americans over BS, nonsense, idealistic crap. And then we're going to discuss a little bit about how this affects Russia-China relations and how that affects China-US relations as well. So it's going to be an absolute blast. I hope you guys have your swim trunks on because we're going to have a great time and dip into the water here, put our toes in. You know what I'm saying?
For being a Christian nation? Well, that's what Tucker Carlson thinks, and he suggested as much in a recent speech. Let's watch that.
They hate Hungary. And they hate it not because of what it's done, but because of what it is. It's a Christian country, and they hate that. And that's the truth. And nobody wants...
Christianity is the word, but I think that the details of what he's saying, if you wanted to unpack it a little bit, is they have morals, virtue, principles, cultural history, that they're not going to abandon and just go with progressivism. So anyone who's not moving forward at a rate that is so rapid that it's making things fall apart, like the roof rack's falling off, the tires are falling off, but we're slamming the gas and we're going as fast as possible. Who cares? So any country that takes a measured approach toward progress is the enemy, and Christian values traditionally are rooted in immovable principles. So it's very difficult to be like, no, 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 abandon that shit. Throw it out the back window. Let's go. We're fucking going this way off to crazy town. So of course they hate them. But don't get caught up in the Christianity thing and get lost in that. Think about it in a practical sense and say, why is Christianity a problem? What about it is holding back the agenda? Anchors.
To say it, but it's true. And it's not a particularly provocative Christian country. I don't think most Hungarians go to church. It's not a theocracy. You're not required to believe in the catechism to live here. It's nothing like that. It's a soft Christian country, the softest ever. 300 years ago, people would look at modern Hungary and say, that's not a Christian country. But by modern standards, it's one of the last countries that identifies as a nation built on Christian precepts. Again, not imposing them on anyone else. But that is enough to incite our policymakers in the United States. And that is exactly why they hate Russia, by the way. I'm not a fan of Russia. And if I was, I wouldn't admit it to a Hungarian audience.
Meanwhile, Utah Senator Mitt Romney seems to be okay with the war in Ukraine going on indefinitely because, quote, we're not losing any lives.
The single most important thing we can do to strengthen ourselves.
This is what I fucking mean, dude. Nobody fucking cares about dead Russians or dead Ukrainians. Where is the... What's the hatred for Russia rooted in? You know, just because Putin's an asshole? Because he invaded Ukraine? You realize that perpetuating the war kills Ukrainians and Russians at a nearly equal rate from what the information I can find on the internet is saying that both sides are taking heavy losses. We're talking about 500,000, in the neighborhood of 500,000 losses combined, around 250 to 300,000 on each side, and everybody's just celebrating that no Americans are dying. You know, like I don't get it. I don't get it.
Ourselves relative to China is to see Russia defeated in Ukraine, because they're allies, and Russia being weakened weakens their ally China. I mean, so and by the way, being able to take an amount which equals what, about 5%.
I think we got to start drug testing fucking senators, because this guy is either fucking completely high or he bumped his head getting out of his car real fucking hard.
Of our military budget, but actually less than 5% of our military budget each year to help the Ukrainians is about the best national defense spending I think we've ever done. We're losing no lives in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are fighting heroically against Russia that has 1,500 nuclear weapons aimed at us. It's like, so we're diminishing and devastating the Russian.
Listen, I'm just fucking stupid, I guess. Tell me the end game of destabilizing Russia with 1,500 nuclear warheads. How do we control the outcome of that? Let's say Putin does get overthrown. Do we expect there to be a clean succession? Is there a clear successor to Putin? How did it go inside Iraq after Saddam crumbled? You had warlords, and now instead of fighting one, you created 10 snakes. And we were in Iraq for fucking 10 years fighting for territory, losing territory, fighting for territory, losing territory. Surges. You remember the fucking surges? This is absolute stupidity. They have not thought more than one move ahead. They're just like, punish Russia, punish Russia. You think fucking Russia is going to crumble? Russia is cozying up to Saudi Arabia, to Iran, to China, all neighbors, strengthening ties with North Korea. What the fuck? Is this guy not sitting in intelligence committee briefings? This is publicly available information. What's going on with BRICS. So if he's got more information in addition to what we can find publicly, then he knows that there's even more going on behind the scenes to do with this. China is not getting weakened at all by this. China is watching this like a Die Hard movie where they know the FBI playbook and they go in and they use it against them. Well, you think China ain't taking notes? You think China isn't setting themselves up strategically to be able to thwart any sort of bullshit sanctions that we try to put on them? Because if you do, you don't understand China, and apparently neither do our leaders, because they're just focused on what I can only understand as a money laundering operation. I don't see a good outcome here, even if we are able to successfully defeat, which means destabilize, because you're not actually going to, Ukraine is actually not going to fully defeat Russia. The only successful outcome here is for Ukraine to cause such a problem for Putin that he loses his grip on power because the Russian people become pissed off at him and then somehow get rid of him, which that isn't really how Russia works. Again, these people should understand that. These people get all the information supposedly. Russia is not an open, free election. It's a little bit more captured than that. You might have a little illusion of being able to make a choice, but the truth is Putin's in power until someone powerful enough and calculating enough figures out a way to replace him. And he's not going to go down. He's still a reasonably young man. Keeps himself in shape. Seems to be articulate, mentally still cognizant. I must be so dumb that I can't even conceptualize what the positive outcome is here. We weaken Ukraine by killing some of their or we weaken Russia by killing some of their soldiers, and maybe we push them back to the original border. There's still going to be extreme hostility. Russia is not going to back down. There's no way. They have much more as far as population. They have much more as far as, I know we're supplying Ukraine with equipment, but they still need people. And if we're not going to get involved, where are they going to get the people? None of it makes sense to me. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't support Russia. I don't really support Ukraine. It doesn't affect me either way, and we could negotiate a peace deal tomorrow that stops people dying. I don't understand why that's not the priority. Human life is worth more than any sort of political posturing or politics or any bullshit. And if you don't believe that, you're a psychopath, sociopath. You don't care about human beings.
Military for a very small amount of money relative to what we spend in the rest of defense. It is very much in America's national interest, in our national interest, to help Ukraine. And the best thing we can do for America is to.
The other thing is the fact that we are creating this alternative to the petrodollar by sanctioning Russia out of being able to sell oil on the open market. He's saying this is great for America. We are cutting the gas supply off without replacing to Europe, and we are cutting our supplies of petroleum in some cases and natural gas and refusing to then supplant by buying from Venezuela or Argentina or some of these other, you know, bad actors that also have oil. It seems like if you have oil, you don't give as much of a shit about what America tells you to do. And it makes sense because you don't really need handouts. You've got a natural resource that everybody who drives something with an engine in it needs and will purchase. Um, so he's like, this is the great for America, but we think that we're punishing Russia, but we're actually strengthening the alliances between our enemies. The axis of evil is rising and organizing and collaborating, whereas before things were good enough that they weren't going to bother to do all this stuff. So that portion of it doesn't make sense. I think this is terrible foreign policy. I think that this is going to lead to the stranglehold that we currently enjoy, and it is how we can use sanctions to functionally shut down economies that we want to spank them. So we're going to sanction them. If we lose control of the Bretton Woods financial system that was agreed to after World War II, and this competing power structure rises, India and China, just the two of them, have close to 4 billion, about half the world's population. I don't understand. Um, Making those two countries come closer together and align themselves kind of against America and against American uh, power, that doesn't seem like a good idea to me. And again, maybe I'm just an ignorant redneck, you know? I don't know.
See people who have nuclear weapons aimed at us getting weaker.
All right, let's start with Romney and then circle back to Hungary. It does not fill me with that much relief to know that we're spending so much money elsewhere that Ukraine is a drop in the bucket by comparison.
Right.
I think, look, a lot of people on the right really despise Mitt Romney by this point. I can't work up much general anger or animosity toward him.
They hate him because he's Christian.
They hate him because he's Mormon. But look, his foreign policy views, and in particular his Ukraine views, I'm sorry, I think are both I mean, I don't even really have to make this case, because that is all most Republicans, the overwhelming majority, 70% of the Republican base agrees not with the neoconservative Ukrainian foreign policy views of most of the candidates, but with Mitt Romney, but with people who are arguing that we have given Ukraine enough support. This is not helping. It's not helping to prolong the war. Yes, it's good that no Americans are dying, but Ukrainians are dying. Maybe they would still be dying if Russia is invading. I understand that. I'm not naive about that. But can we structure an actual resolution that it maybe involves a cessation of Ukrainian territory to bring an end to this war? Something that is going to happen eventually anyway. So is it going to happen today, or is it going to happen after 50,000 more people are killed, or is it going to happen after the entire country is overrun and occupied, in which case maybe it'll be more than that? It's going to happen at some point. We're supposed to be real foreign policy realist people. I agree. I'm not international humanitarianism. Let's just do realism. What's best for us? What's best for Ukraine? Is it worth spending this money, and is it worth dragging out the process of Ukraine's destruction to save a sliver of territory that has a lot of Russian-speaking people and wants to be part of Russia or independent anyway? I don't think it is.
Sure. Well, I would say I would push back a little and say I don't think that what's best for us should control, because the us isn't you and I. It is American imperial project. Mm-hmm. So I think that there are a lot of shared interests with regular citizens around the world, none of whom want there to be all of these endless wars and conflict that are generated by financial institutions like the IMF, that are being used as tools by leading governments like ourselves. That aside, I think that the tell here is twofold, to your point. One is that it's an open admission and an acknowledgement, as they've been doing periodically throughout, but it's a very open acknowledgement that this is all about a proxy war and weakening the other nuclear power. The interests of Ukrainians aren't even a second thought in that whole dialogue, the whole monologue that he just set out there. And two, there's an admission that as long as American lives aren't on the line, that the moral, ethical implications of engaging in this prolonged conflict don't matter here at home.
Right.
And what's so frustrating is that so many people who have been on our side of this and arguing for the end of this conflict, and that America shouldn't be fueling this conflict artificially to last longer than it would have ordinarily without negotiation, because it's in our best interest to weaken Russia, the state's best interest to weaken Russia. We've been the ones characterized as being inhumane and indifferent to the interests of Ukrainians in our lives. But what you hear there from Mitt Romney is an open admission that as long as the bodies on the ground are Ukrainian bodies and not American bodies, then it's of no cost to us. If you have a different conception of the world where you see ourselves as global citizens that should be aligning against these horrible, corrupt, powerful governments, then you see exactly how callous it is to be told as American citizens that you should not care as long as the people on the ground don't have a passport. And I got to say, that does not sound like a humanitarian mission.
All right, let's circle back to Hungary now. Now, look, I have a lot of esteem for Hungary and the Hungarian people and their contributions to the preservation of Christianity and Catholicism, coming to the aid of the last great Catholic monarch of Europe, Maria Theresa, and helping her keep her claim in the War of the Austrian Succession and rebuff those Prussian invaders and put Protestantism in its place. So mad props to Hungary and what it's done for the church. That said, today, Hungary is not, actually, as Tucker concedes in that clip, Hungary's church attendance is lower than most of America and Russia's. Mm-hmm. Their abortion rates are higher than most of America.
For anybody that wants to say that America is better than other countries and doesn't have a shitload of blood on their hands, this is watson.brown.edu. Post 9/11 wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, and Pakistan have taken a tremendous human toll on those countries. As of September 2021, an estimated 432,093 civilians in these countries have died violent deaths as a result of the wars. As of May 2023, an estimated 3.6 through 3.8 million people have died indirectly in post 9/11 war zones. The total death toll in these war zones could be at least 4.5 to 4.7 million and counting. Though the precise mortality figure remains unknown, civilian deaths have also resulted from U.S. post 9/11 military operations and in Somalia and other countries. So, what exactly is the benefit? Why is Russia so evil, but us? So the death toll, they've killed 300,000 Ukrainians. We've killed somewhere between 3.6 and 4.7 million civilians and combatants combined in the past 20 years since 2000. Is that good? You proud of that? And we're happy. Politicians are happy to continue. It's all about money. It's disgusting.
America. Mm-hmm. They're poorer places than most of America. Mm-hmm. So, it's funny because a lot of conservatives used to be or thought of, I guess, maybe just during Bush fervor as like the rah-rah patriotic side. You can have enough. Look, you should have respect for.
We still are. We still are patriotic, but being patriotic does not mean saying let's attack Russia over Ukraine. Okay, so we're not directly attacking them, but they're being attacked by other combatants using American weaponry. That's as close as you can get without actually doing it. We're just sick of war. 20 years in these countries, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, have taken a tremendous toll on those countries, taken a tremendous toll on this country too, our country. We don't want to continue to have an economy that is based on perpetual war. How hard is that to fucking understand, You get sick of war after a while. Everybody gets weary of war, especially the ones that have to go over there and fight it.
Hungary, that's fine, but let's be real about what this is not some. I don't know. I don't know that it's exactly the like Christian or Catholic paradise that some in this NatCon or more weird
it's bizarre,
religious
Robbie.
traditions make. They're all about
It's
Hungary.
just so bizarre. So one, I have a lot of fond feelings of Hungary. One of my best friends from high school is Hungarian. I was there for her wedding in I think 2015. She got married in one of the most famous churches in the country. We had to cover up, and we all were very respectful and all of those things once we were in there. But it certainly wasn't some bastion of deep-seated religious belief that was happening within the walls of that cathedral, at least while us folks were in there. But the bigger point is this. America is overwhelmingly a Christian nation. We have never had a president who wasn't Christian. God bless Bernie for trying, and Marianne Williamson for trying again.
And I am genuinely trying to understand this. So let's just scroll. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but like here's CNN politics. The West must now consider, and this was written after the Wagner thing, right? And it's like here's a bold headline in the middle of the article. Come on, dude. No one cares. A wounded Putin could be an even more dangerous Putin. Washington wonders whether the turmoil is over inside. So, I mean, you are talking about the possibility that a weakened Putin could seek more extreme ways to turn around a war that is threatening. I mean, are you looking for Ukraine to get nuked? You think that he's just going to go down without a fight and not push any buttons? What could come next? Assessing the Putin regime's stability and Western options, like, and who would dare to emerge to supplant Putin? They would be killed immediately. Third, regime stalwarts might move to replace Putin, not to end the regime, but save it. Elites or insiders might initiate a coup. We did see that. So we're trying to increase public frustration with Putin, but he just jails. What comes after Putin's rule in Russia? This is a Time article. Assassination attempt on Putin. If Putin were eliminated and someone like Nikolai Patrushev on Russia's Security Council were to take power, little would change. Same goes for, I mean, you just get another guy. What do you think? You're going to like replace Putin with a democracy? You're going to conquer Russia and install some sort of U.S. puppet? It's just, it's nonsense. It is complete nonsense.
Again, but we have a country that is 63% Christian, according to a poll that I just pulled up, and the bulk of the remainder is not some other religion. It's just 23% unaffiliated. So the idea that there's these secret anti-Christian values and beliefs that are dictating American foreign policy, when like everybody is either Christian or nothing at all, it strains credulity from my perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Well, a new CNN report alleges that Russian intelligence is operating a systematic program to launder pro-Kremlin propaganda into the United States through private relationships between Russian operatives and unwitting Western targets, according to newly declassified intelligence. In response, the Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal wrote on Twitter, CNN exists to provide us intelligence with a vehicle for laundering its propaganda. Its top hosts enthusiastically manipulate the American public on behalf of their handlers in Langley, Foggy Bottom, and the Pentagon. This is pure projection.
Right. This is, I mean, the obsession with the idea that Russian narratives are permeating our awareness. I mean, they just say just mundane observations of the reality of the current war effort is labeled by NBC to be somehow Putin talking points have made their way into Western discourse. How dare they? It's just like if you say the sky is blue, but Vladimir Putin agrees that the sky is blue, you are now contributing to Russian-based disinformation because the underlying information obviously is true. The sky is blue, but it's Russia agrees with that, so it's disinformation.
It's so scary. This stuff is being framed as so scary that I think I found my next Halloween costume.
Oh,
it's going to be Russian narratives.
Ooh.
Over the past 48 hours, we just entered the most dangerous phase of the coming hot war with Russia and China, and no one is prepared for what's coming. Everyone but a few smart people are actually ignoring it. The media would rather distract you with new COVID variants and masking concerns at your children's school.
COVID cases are on the rise across the nation and in our area, which means something many of us thought we'd seen the last of is back. Businesses, hospitals, even colleges, including one in our area, reinstating mask mandates.
Yeah, those are important stories, but they're missing the most important story in the world, and they're all ignoring it right now. Look at Drudge today, for crying out loud. Look at CNN, top story about Burning Man. What about Fox News? Nope, it's all about DeSantis. But don't fall for it. It's all a misdirection. Look over here while President Biden is caught taking millions of dollars from foreign companies. Look over here while Americans are losing their jobs, and new data this morning shows 61% of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. Credit card debt, the highest it's ever been. And
Here's what researchers are blaming. I don't have to fucking read that. You've had 15 to 20% inflation over 3 years. 20%. And that's the official estimate. So you could add probably safely another 30% to it with the way they manipulate the numbers and take the lowest in each category. So if chicken, fish, and beef and pork, whichever one went up the least. Same thing with grains, corn, wheat, each of the commodity sectors, metals, which one went up the least? It's not realistic. The CPI is a manipulated number. Shadow numbers. Look up shadow numbers if you want to at least get a concept of what the real numbers are.
inflation is going to run hot for years. And new data out on Friday shows unemployment shot up. Experts finally saying the wheels are finally coming off this labor market. Expect many big companies to start laying off a lot of people. And let me know in the comments below if you know anyone who's already been facing layoffs. They are coming. So what's a good way to distract from a crumbling economy if you're President Biden heading into an election season? Start a war with Russia. Wag the dog. Did you ask for a war with Russia? No, neither did I. But you're about to get one. And my friend Tucker Carlson just exposed the entire plan.
So once you start indicting your political opponents, you know that you have to win or else they're going to indict you if they win, right?
Right.
And so they can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're not going to do COVID again. I know everyone on the right's afraid they're going to do COVID and mask mandate. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. If they've already been exposed, that won't work. There's going to be, no, what are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia. Is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
Really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway.
A hot war with Russia. Remember, we're at war with Russia already, but we're doing it through a proxy, using Ukrainians to fight the war, sending them billions of dollars in weapons. More than 400,000 Ukrainians are now dead. More than 2.5 million are permanently disabled. So we're using Ukraine until we can't use them anymore. When all of their men are dead, then we'll have to send our own troops. And it's all part of the plan, which Congressman Adam Schiff explained. We fight Russia over there so we don't have to fight them here in Washington, D.C.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
Now, Tucker only exposed one big piece of
Fuck
this
is he
plan,
talking
which is the
about?
Russian piece. The other piece is the economic side, which we'll get into in a second. But first, on the Russian side, something happened this week that almost no one covered. We covered it on our show, but it was radio silence in most of the mainstream media. The Biden administration quietly laying out a plan to make it impossible for any future president to keep us out of a hot war with Russia. By the way, Russia has already said that this will lead to direct war with their military, and China is standing by, ready to jump in. So according to the Wall Street Journal, what the Biden administration did is astonishing. They introduced a plan to permanently fund Ukraine's proxy war against Russia, and the structure would make it impossible for a future president to undo the plan. Think of it like Obamacare, but on steroids. Everyone, including a Republican president and a Republican Congress, tried to unravel Obamacare, but they couldn't do it. The structure is virtually permanent. The same is true of this plan for Ukraine. So what is the likelihood that in the next
We're not committed to this. We didn't bring them into NATO. We're not going to truly defend them. We're not going to get directly involved. I don't believe we're going to get directly involved. I think we're going to use them and lose them. Ukraine is going to find out how Vietnam felt when we bailed out of that war. We were perfectly willing to engage up to a point, and beyond that, no thanks. And that wasn't even actual Russian troops. That was fighting the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese army. And we left. We turned tail. We said, this is losing battle. We're going to retreat. You guys have fun. And in this case, withdrawing would be so much easier. We just stop sending money and say, hey, thanks for doing what you did. You guys are heroes. But it's just not working out. So thanks for trying. And we're not going to bring the full might of NATO against Russia over Ukraine. Doesn't appear that we're going to, because we didn't actually do what started this war at the outset, which was saying we were going to bring them into NATO. As soon as the conflict broke out, we said, ooh, boy, if we bring them in, we're going to be like committed. Now that Russia has actually attacked them, if we bring them in, we are committed to a hot war. And we just said, you know what, let's just send them stuff.
Next few months, we are involved in a nuclear war with Russia. Colonel Tony Schaefer says 80%. And he agrees with Tucker on this. And he says we are headed for a nuclear war with Mother Russia.
Do you share Tucker's view on it?
The answer is it's very likely. I put it at the 80% likelihood. Vladimir Putin, who is not bluffing, he is doing what he believes is necessary to protect the Russian Empire, the Russian Republic. It is what it is. And George, the West, England and the United States in particular, don't seem to be listening to him. He's been very clear about what he's trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, Russia is not bluffing. They've now put their nuclear arsenal on the highest alert possible for the first time ever. Quoting now, the nuclear-capable Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile system was previously touted by President Putin as being capable of hitting any target on Earth, and is widely believed to be by far the longest-range missile in Russia's arsenal. And it's been nicknamed by NATO the Satan II. Nice name, Satan II. The timing of all of this is on purpose, of course. Putin is not bluffing. This warhead can wipe out a country the size of France. Just one rocket, and it can't be shot down. Putin says, quote, the new complex has the highest tactical and technical characteristics and is capable of overcoming all modern means of anti-missile defense. It has no analogs in the world and won't have for a long time to come. In other words, nothing can stop it and nothing can come close. Oh, good. So why don't we keep poking the bear, President Biden? The reason the United States is so desperate, though, is because the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar, which of course is losing favor around the world to settle oil transactions as the world's reserve currency. It's slipping away beneath their feet right now. There's no better indicator of this than in Africa over the past few weeks. We've seen 4 different military coups ousting their leaders who have been in bed with Western countries for decades.
Another African leader toppled by the army. Whose turn will it be next?
The United States and France have been stealing Africa's resources for decades, keeping these countries in a permanent state of poverty. We've been stealing their manganese, their gold, their silver, their uranium, their lithium, their oil. These African countries are saying enough is enough.
What people want is to gain back their wealth, back their uranium, their gold, their iron, their phosphate, their oil, their gas. And this scares the West.
I mean, look at Niger, which told the French to get out of our country, stop stealing our...
See, we're so focused on fucking Russia that we're not watching all this other shit falling apart. And trust me, it is falling apart, and people are seeing what fucking assholes we are. Whether you think so or not, the rest of the world sees it. You know, we are bullies. We are bullies, and we don't care about other people dying. We don't give a shit. Clearly, at least some people don't. People who don't care about humans, only the agenda. You know what I mean? Like, real American values. The Constitution it literally says that we can't have a standing army for more than a certain amount of time. And we just are, in a lot of cases, completely ignoring the actual rules and governing documents that dictate how our republic is supposed to be run, because this ain't a democracy, it's a republic.
Resources. And the French got so pissed this week that they decided to smash all of the trucks that they had there at their mines. So we're going to leave. Yeah, fine, we'll leave all the mines alone, but we're going to smash all the trucks on the way out. Can you believe these guys? And then last week, the country of Gabon did the same thing. France and the United States are in a panic mode right now. Victoria Nuland from the United States went to Africa in a panic mode. And according to the Gray Zone, people who attended the meetings had never seen her so desperate. Why? Why is she so desperate? Because Vladimir Putin just welcomed these African nations into a new friendship, and so did China, where they can keep their own minerals, they can keep their own sovereignty, make partnerships that benefit those countries.
Yeah, we're weakening Russia, all right.
The West can't let this happen. They can't let Russia and China create these friendships and these partnerships. And today, Moscow is warning NATO, back off or else. Russia's UN envoy, Dmitry Polyansky, says NATO's involvement in Ukraine has created a big risk of a direct clash between Russia and the West. He also said something very interesting. He said they've been hearing radio messages and transmissions that a number of NATO members, generals, and soldiers have been killed in Ukraine. So something really fishy is going on, guys. Why is NATO leaking information about the deaths of their generals and soldiers being killed in fighting with Russia? They're not even supposed to be there. They know Russia is listening. They know this information is getting out. You don't do that unless you want to use it for some big purpose. Something big is happening, and I'm really scared as to what comes next. So get ready.
Yeah.
That's the news update part of today's video. Now I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to this global demand for minerals. That company is FE Battery Metals. Now, they deal directly with the global demand for lithium. It's also known as the white oil because the demand is off the charts for lithium. Here's the news and the supply chain disruption of lithium worldwide. First, you had the country of Chile, which nationalized their lithium mines. It took them over, said that we're not going to have any country taking our lithium anymore. We're going to do that. We will profit from it. It's also a national security risk, so they want to protect their lithium mines in Chile. Now, when Chile nationalized lithium, the price of lithium bottomed out and then started to rally. So we are now in a bull market for lithium. Another important note here is that China has also basically cornered the market on lithium. How do you think that's going to be sitting with Western leaders as they're trying to build out this entire battery infrastructure for electric vehicles around the world? They know they are screwed, and China has cornered the market.
China's been awake.
And get this,
active.
The United States has only one lithium mine in production.
While we've been bullying everybody, China has been buying water resources, mineral resources, forming alliances with third world countries and loaning them money. In some cases, loaning them so much money that they can't pay it back, and then saying, oh, that's okay. Just give us some land in your country and let us build a base, and we'll forgive your debt. They've been doing a lot of stuff when we've just been attacking people. They've been forming relationships. They've been securing mineral rights, access to resources, access to water, spreading their culture and their influence, and now you're tying Russia and China together at the waist. And it's brilliant foreign policy by our leaders. Yeah, okay.
In the United States, because we've outsourced it all to China. So China and Russia in one move could shut it all down. All exports of lithium to American companies overnight, Ford, GE, Tesla, would all be screwed. If we get any hotter in this war with Russia, it's game over for getting lithium, for getting natural gas, for getting uranium, getting oil from Russia and China, all of it. And that's why GE just announced a major $650 million investment in lithium mining. And then like clockwork, all of the other auto companies started doing the same thing. Volvo in talks to try and buy lithium mining companies. Tesla did the exact same thing. They're all scrambling right now because China has just cornered the market on just about everything that we need to run our Western economies. And they did it all without firing a bullet, by the way. We should learn from them. We spend $20 trillion and invade other countries to get our way. If you're an investor, you better pay attention to what I'm about to show you, because this company, FE Battery Metals, could explode when they announce lithium drilling results. That's right. Now, if you know anything about the mining sector, you know that a stock usually takes off like a rocket after they announce drilling results. If they have positive drilling results and the stock is trading at 35 cents, boom. Right? That's exactly what happened last month when I told you about another company before they announced drilling results. Their stock price doubled overnight, about 48 hours, and now it's at a new all-time high. So thanks for all the emails about it. I know many of you sent me nice emails about it. I know you made a lot of good profits on that one, but it's really you that needs to pat yourself on the back because you've done homework, you've researched their project, and then you took action on it. So let me tell you about FE Battery Metals. They're a small market cap company, and the CEO is doing exactly what I would be doing if I ran this company. He's bought land next to the hottest lithium mining territory in Canada and some of the biggest mining companies in Canada.
All right, and then let's just watch a tiny piece of this one. This has got some good good information. Redacted did an excellent job. But,
only a few months into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Kremlin's war machine was already beginning to bog down and run out of gas. Sometimes literally. Ukrainian resistance was far more ferocious than Moscow's military planners had initially anticipated. Russian casualties were beginning to pile up in the tens of thousands, while Russia's inventories of ammunition, guns, tanks, and trucks were all getting rapidly depleted, as the front line demanded ever greater amounts of resources be burned in order to keep stable. By the end of 2022, the front line had more or less stabilized along a front that has largely remained static up to the production of this video. But the Ukrainians possess an advantage that the Russians inherently do not. They have the vast, nearly bottomless resources of the American and Western European military-industrial complexes behind them. As more tanks, guns, artillery, and munitions produced in Europe and the United States within factories the Russians cannot possibly destroy continue to pour into the hands of Ukrainian soldiers and partisans. Since Russia ultimately has more than 3 times Ukraine's population to pull manpower from, the invasion is gradually evolving into a brutal war of attrition between Russia's better ability to replace losses in manpower with Ukraine's better ability to replace losses in equipment and supplies. Largely cut off and isolated from trade with the outside world after unprecedented Western...
maybe I'm doing math wrong, but I think 7 times 5 is 35, so it's almost 5 times, not 3 times. It's about 4.6 or something like that without a calculator.
Financial sanctions. The Russian government has found it increasingly challenging to replace their losses in tanks, aircraft, artillery, and especially microchips and other advanced weapon systems to continue fighting on an effective 21st century war. But by the end of 2022, one country had stepped up above all the others to begin supplying the Russian war machine with much of the equipment it needs to continue staying in the fight: Iran. As the winter season of 2022-23 set in, hundreds of Iranian-manufactured kamikaze drones known as the Shahed-136 suddenly began appearing across the battlefield in Ukraine under Russian service. The Russians would go on to use swarms of these relatively inexpensive Iranian-made drones to help bombard Ukrainian civilian infrastructure into rubble by overwhelming their air defenses with sheer numbers. A tactic which eventually contributed to roughly half of the Ukrainian electric grid getting knocked offline in a deliberate campaign of terror. But it's not just the drones that the Iranians are actively sending to assist the Russians either. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, better known as the IRGC, is the unconventional, asymmetric, and ideological military wing of the Iranian armed forces. And by the end of 2022, they had deployed many of their own military advisors and soldiers on the ground within the Russian-occupied sections of Ukraine. And in addition to the hundreds of kamikaze drones, the Iranians have also been providing the Russians with much-needed ammunition, artillery shells, ballistic missiles, and body armor to help keep their inventory stable and to help keep them fighting on for longer. The Iranian regime has gone all in on militarily supporting the Russian side during the invasion of Ukraine, in much the same way that the Americans and Europeans are actively supporting the Ukrainian side. But the growing cooperation between Moscow and Tehran extends far beyond the borders of Ukraine, and the world may just be witnessing the birth of a full-blown Russian-Iranian military alliance that could define the 21st century in the region. In many ways, this makes perfect geopolitical sense to both sides at the moment. In the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Russian Federation received an unprecedented hailstorm of financial sanctions from Western and Western-aligned countries from around the world, to the point where it suddenly became the most heavily sanctioned regime on the planet, with more than triple the amount of sanctions levied against it as the world's second most heavily sanctioned country, Iran. The two countries ended 2022 and entered 2023 as the number 1 and number 2 most financially isolated pariah states in the world. And so they each have few alternatives right now to trade with than each other. As a consequence, Russian exports to Iran have risen by more than 27% since the invasion of Ukraine began, while Iranian exports to Russia have risen by more than 10%. Russia has since agreed to invest more than $40 billion into helping develop Iran's natural gas infrastructure, while the Russians even helped the Iranians launch a satellite into orbit last August that the Pentagon claims is helping Iran's drones operate over Ukraine. While extremely ideologically opposed at the national level, Iran and Russia also ultimately view themselves as sharing the same common enemy in the form of the United States and the collective West. Iran and Russia have for years now fought together on the same side to prop up the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And ever fearful of a potential future conflict with the United States in the Persian Gulf region, the Ukrainian battlefield grants the Iranians a valuable opportunity to test their own military hardware on the Russian side against American-supplied hardware on the Ukrainian side, so they can analyze how they stack up against each other. At the same time, Iran and Russia both complement each other militarily extremely well. The Iranians are capable of supplying the Russians with a lot of the ammunition, drones, rockets, missiles, and body armor that they need to keep fighting in Ukraine, while the Russians can and now actively are supplying the Iranians with some of their advanced fighter jets, helicopters, and air defense systems like the S-300 and S-400 that the Iranians need to defend their nuclear weapons research facilities from potential Israeli or American airstrikes. There's even the potential for the Russians to one day go even further and do what was up until recently completely unthinkable: assist the Iranian regime with developing their own nuclear weapon. But Iran and Russia's growing alliance and partnership in Ukraine and elsewhere today in the 2020s is a pretty strange aberration in history, because much like Russia and China, Russia and Iran have pretty much been major rivals and bitter enemies for nearly their entire histories. And still today, just beneath the surface of their partnership, historic tensions fester after centuries of conflict, mutual mistrust, and betrayals. For you see, ever since diplomatic relations were first established centuries ago between the Russians and the Persians, they have fought multiple wars against each other, largely over their competing influences and interests around the Caspian Sea, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. By the turn of the 19th century, the Qajar dynasty of Iran controlled pretty much the entirety of modern-day Iran's borders, with the addition of pretty much the entirety of the South Caucasus, comprising the modern-day states of Armenia and Azerbaijan and much of Georgia, along with the now Russian territory of Dagestan. The Iranians had controlled much of these territories for centuries, but beginning in 1804, the Russian Empire began invading and advancing into the area and conquering it. In two separate treaties signed in 1813 and 1828, the Russians conquered and annexed the territories from Iran that would later make up modern-day Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and Dagestan. Territories that would remain a part of Russia and the Soviet Union for nearly the next 2 centuries until the 1990s, when the Soviet Union ultimately collapsed. But Russian influence in this formerly Iranian part of the world continues to persist. Dagestan remains a core Russian territory to this day.
So this is a super interesting video on its own, but that was the main portion that I wanted to illustrate. Is just another example of driving your enemies closer together. We're not even touching on China. We're just dealing with just Iran supplying them, and they're talking about Russia having trouble getting chips. China's got chips. And there could be a Taiwanese invasion. I know we say we're going to blow up that semiconductor factory if China invades, but we'll see if that's if we've got teeth on that threat or not. So we are destabilizing what was a peaceful, maybe not overly friendly, but it was a peaceful relationship. And in my personal opinion, when Russia was massing troops on the border, when we were discussing bringing Ukraine into NATO, we could have said, "Hey, let's take this mobilization of troops along the border seriously, and assume that this isn't going to go well, and let's choose peace instead of war." We went down that road, we headed straight for war, and even after it's happened, we still haven't backed down, we still haven't asked for any talks, we haven't asked what Moscow would even accept. We haven't tried, we haven't had a discussion, and I personally think that it's a travesty on human life that is being perpetrated by the U.S. government, refusing to negotiate and at least ask the question, what could we do to bring this to a peaceful resolution, and stop the fighting, stop the war. Nobody's going to win. So anyway, I hope that this was, you know, somewhat illustrative of my opinions about foreign policy mistakes that the U.S. government is making. I think we aren't taking the rest of the world seriously, whether you're talking about the African mineral rights and the revolutions that are happening on that continent, kicking out allied leaders because they're sick of Western shit. We have some sort of cancer growing in our governments and the governments of many other first world Western type countries, NATO countries, and that cancer is corporate money buying way too much influence inside of our governments and deciding that their priorities don't align with the things that would be good for regular citizens. They have much different objectives, it appears, than normal people, because I don't think normal people are in favor of any of this. I think normal people want peace. Normal people would rather put money, resources into winning hearts and minds through business and economic partnerships where we all win versus continuing to focus on the military might and attacking and killing and producing bombs and missiles and making that the backbone of our economy. I understand that there's bad people. We need to have a military. But we can have weapons on standby and we can train our troops without actually deploying them and, you know, imposing our will militarily on the rest of the world. So let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your opinions. If you think that I'm absolutely dead wrong on any of this stuff, I'm absolutely willing to listen to opposing points of view. I am not infallible. I'm a human being just like everybody else. I'm not trying to claim that I am some genius who knows everything. I'm just trying to explain my understanding. I'm trying to bring information from multiple sources, bring it together, and unlike what I feel like is being done by the mainstream media where you're only getting one side of things, I am at least making an attempt to try to bring multiple sources together and show corroborated information that at least, confirms what people are saying here, even though there is a lot of questions still, because we're not getting good information. The media is banned at this moment from going to the front lines. That's why it's so hard to understand what is actually going on in this conflict with Ukraine, and then how it's affecting our relationships with the rest of the world, not just Russia and China. But as you can see, there's a lot of other moving parts here. So anyway, take care, and I will see you guys soon.